Okay, anatomy students, this is the last one of this little series. These are notes on the uterine cycle. So let's begin. I'm always going to start up here with our little cheat sheet. Remember that if you've got estrogen, that's going to increase the secretion of GnRH from the hypothalamus, which is going to stimulate the anterior pituitary to release luteinizing hormone, or LH, while progesterone is going to cause a decrease in GnRH, but that stimulates the cells in the anterior pituitary gland to release follicle stimulating hormone, or FSH. So I'll refer back to that while we talk about this diagram. All right, so why don't we start at the beginning? Remember that the beginning of the cycle always starts with day 1. It's the first day of bleeding during menstruation, and that is exactly what is happening in this area. I'll use purple. So days 1 through 5, we have menstruation. Since we're talking about the uterine cycle, we have to talk about the endometrial lining. And during menstruation, the endometrium is being shed. And that's what is causing the bleeding. Now, why is this happening? Well, the main reason is because the corpus luteum from the previous ovulation has now shrunk in size, and so we are going to have a decrease in estrogen and also in progesterone. We're also going to have a decrease in GnRH, but there's going to be some FSH that is being released. And this is a really important point because during menstruation, you do have the growth of the follicle for the next cycle. And so that's only going to occur if we do have some FSH in the bloodstream. It's not a lot. It's still at a pretty low level. But at this time, we do have growth of the follicle. I'm just going to mention it here because it is a part of the ovarian cycle. Even though we're talking about uterine here, remember that the ovarian cycle is happening at the very same time. So the follicle is growing during this time. Okay, so I'm going to continue my drawing here all the way up until about day 13, because during this time we are going to have a phase that is called the proliferative phase. What this means is that the endometrium is thickening, and this is because the follicle, again in the ovarian cycle, is growing and releasing more and more estrogen. And remember that it's the estrogen that is going to cause the thickening of the endometrium. And that's going to continue to happen until day 14. Day 14 in general is ovulation. At this point, the follicle is at its biggest. It's going to release lots of estrogen, which causes an increase in GnRH. Let me erase that because that should be a little lowercase n. And that is going to cause an increase in LH, which is called the LH surge. Now, with ovulation, we get another thing that's going on. We get the formation of the corpus luteum, which I will abbreviate as CL, corpus luteum. I'll just write it down here. And the corpus luteum is going to secrete progesterone. Now, progesterone is going to perform the function of maintaining the endometrium. And what this means is that it's going to stimulate the glands in the endometrium to secrete glycogen. Remember that the whole point of this is to prepare the uterus for possible fertilization. So this whole phase, when we were talking about the ovarian cycle, we called it the post-ovulatory phase, but here when we're talking about the uterine cycle, we're calling it the secretory phase. And then over here, we were calling this the proliferative phase. And then, of course, we have menstruation. Now, over towards the end, we have our corpus luteum decreases in size, and our levels of progesterone are going to start to decrease as well if there is no fertilization. Because if there's no fertilization, then we don't need to use up energy in order to maintain that endometrial lining. So at the end of this phase, when we have very low estrogen and we have low progesterone, because that corpus luteum has now become the corpus albicans, and when we have low GnRH and LH is low as well, then that's when the endometrial lining is going to be shed again during menstruation. And that is what's going on in the uterine phase of the female sexual cycle. And I kind of mixed in a little bit of the ovarian phase as well, so that you could see how the two connect, so that you could understand that they are both happening at the same time. I hope this was helpful. Thank you very much for watching.